we're live. Worked perfectly. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another segment of the Wide World of Warhammer. With us today, we got the champs in the house, the reigning, defending, undefeated for last couple of years champions, Team Queensland. With us, we've got the beautiful and sexy man himself, Josh McGowan. How you doing, buddy?
How you doing, guys? Thanks for having me on.
No worries. So he's the state rep for Queensland and one of the participating players for this current team. We got the captain of the Mercs, the man himself, Dineeth. How you doing, buddy?
I'm well, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. Great to be here.
No worries at all. And maybe the Commander Farsight himself. Yeah, I'm going to say it, Commander Farsight. You can be Shadow Sun Dineeth. We got Ducky, or who do you prefer? Do you prefer Shadow Sun or Farsight Duck? Who do you channel more with?
I prefer Shadow Sun for what's under her armor.
Leave that as you may be. So, but also one of the reigning players for the WTC team and one of the players for the Team Queensland. So before we get stuck into the questions and stuff, ask about how Queensland are doing heading into this current ANZ Team Champs, just go around the room and introduce yourselves, guys. So Ducky, you're one of the players for the Queensland team, but how did you get into 40K and how long have you been playing for?
Yeah, so I started playing 40K when I was in grade 2. So I was just at school one day and the illustrious Rory Argent brought his guard in and we were playing in a wet lunch, just sitting in the classroom, and he was playing with some other dude playing some Space Marines, dragged me along to a games workshop, and they just turned into 4th edition. So 4th edition was being previewed. It was a killer box that came with about 18 models. It was horrendous. So picked up in 4th edition, played through till sort of 5th, put it down a little bit at the end of high school, as always everyone does. Picked up again sort of first year of uni, and I ran into, I think Eric was about 11 at a games workshop, and I was crushing the games workshop tournaments, and then I rocked up to an event one day at Mount Cravat, and I had like this 11-year-old crush me on the table and just ruin my hopes and dreams. And he's like, "Hey, you're pretty cool, dude. Why don't you come to some events outside of Games Workshop?" And I was like, "Well, they do that?" So it's gone from, my first event being pulled out of a GW to, representing Australia overseas, and all things in between with, a bit of, local Masters winning, some Australian Masters wins, and Queensland rep winning, and the big one for Australia.
From from small things, big things come, right? Or something along those lines. It sounds like a movie picture story himself. So happy days. And
true Cinderella story.
True Cinderella story. Unfortunately, I mean, maybe we've upgraded though. So Eric was supposed to be on, but he's handling onions. It sounds like he's busy handling onions and couldn't be with us tonight. So, but it's all right. We got Ducky in the house. That's what really matters. Dineeth. So for people who haven't heard you on the Normal Blokes, some podcast, I guess, about the competitive 40K experience. I don't know.
Just some average guys. Yeah.
Some average guys. How long have you been playing 40K for? And I understand you're the captain for the Queensland Mercs team this year.
Yeah, so similar sentiments to Ducky. Like had fun enjoying the game to some capacity as a kid. But didn't really have the time or resources until like finishing uni. But I guess the big one that got me back in is when I was in dental school, I was like hyper uncoordinated, like very, very uncoordinated. So I needed to pick something up to get my hand skills up. And it was either cross-stitching or painting minis. And I thought painting minis was like just a tiny, tiny bit cooler. Not much, but like a tiny bit cooler. So I picked that. And then I was literally painting at a G-Dub one day and I had my like dental goggles on and I ran into Luke Pierce. And he's like, "Hey, bro, what are you doing?" And we played a game, and he schooled me with like 7th Ed Elder, and it just went from there. So, yeah, being lucky enough to do okay at some events and be, one of the coaches for the WTC team last year that went over. So that was like a massive highlight. And part of the Mercs team this year, which is exciting. Oh yeah, we do the Normal Blokes as well. It's a cool podcast.
Absolutely.
Never heard of you.
I haven't heard of them either, actually.
Too good. But you're also the reigning captain for last year, so obviously taking on the title and maybe being the captain for another winning team, we'll have to wait and see. But with us, someone who actually plays 40K, believe it or not, we see him run events all over Queensland. Josh McGowan. So, how long have you been playing 40K for and been involved with the scene, Josh?
2nd edition, I came in, but it was like a couple of months later we transitioned to 3rd. So I was about 11, so I'm 37 now. So that's like 26 years. I've been going about. At 14, I got like a work experience job at a local gaming store called Dragonfire Games. And then that's pretty much when I started running my first events, because the boss was like, I have no idea what 40K is and I don't like it, so you've got it. So pretty much like on Saturdays was like what we call the RTT nows, like the store one days, like little three round scrims and stuff like that, lower points and all that. But yeah, so pretty much been doing it ever since. I had a little bit of a break a couple of years ago when I moved into state, but pretty much came back about a year and a half later and then fired back up again. So that's it.
And the rest is history, as they say. Oh, fantastic. So, and I understand you've been like running a lot of events over in Queensland. So obviously, as part of the title, Gladiator Gaming, so a big tournament organizing group there, but also very passionate about playing, obviously. And unfortunately, was supposed to be part of the Queensland team last year, but due to unfortunate events, couldn't attend. But part of it this year, and well earned and deserved for sure. So, so how did you guys go overall last year? So I know Josh unfortunately wasn't able to attend, but Dineeth, you led the team overall to a win. But were you guys happy with it? And how did it all come about like last year?
Yeah, last year was like a super interesting year because we had a lot of like really strong existing players like Eric, Liam, Simon, and we had a lot of like new blood. That was a great comment by Braden. Yeah, so we had a number of new players. We had Will Milton stepping in last minute to fill in Josh McGowan's army, where he had never played. He had played one game of guard before the event, which was the night before after we got on the plane and landed in New South Wales. So I was very lucky that, in leadership position there, I could lean on people like Eric and Liam and Simon to help out where needed. Eric pretty much took over pairings and he absolutely killed it. But yeah, it was a big growth opportunity. I had a great time doing it, but I also realized that it's a fuckload of work. Fuckload of work to captain a team, as you know, Sam. Really happy with how we went. We had a few very close calls, especially in the final against WA. But yeah, really had a really good time down there at Madawi.
Yeah, so looking back on the event, were you guys happy with how you went? Obviously, you won the event, so you can't complain about that. But were there some things that maybe you could have done better in hindsight, or things you wish you improved upon? Obviously, I know Josh, you would have paid close attention as well as Ducky, as the event went on. Was there some things you thought maybe about the prep or the event overall that you think you could have done better? Maybe Dineeth, you can answer first, and then Ducky chime in.
I definitely because it was the first time I'd captained a team of this size. I definitely underestimated organization and prep work required. So I think we could have done better team prep days, could have organized things a bit earlier because there was a bit of a scramble at the end. I mean, things fell into place. I can't be unhappy because we won the thing. But yeah, that could have definitely been better. And I've tried to implement that this year a bit more with the Mercs. So it's been all smooth sailing since then. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. So obviously since then, since last year's ANZ TC, you guys went to the WTC. So Ducky and Dineeth just had learning experiences and attended and won the whole damn thing. So heading into this year, how have you learned from the WTC heading into this? So Ducky, was there some stuff from the WTC that you learnt about that you're taking into this year's ANZ Team Champs, which for people who aren't aware, replicates that format mono mono per se, 8v8?
Yeah, the biggest thing was the commitment and the time that you put into it and the dedication, not just to yourself and your own lists, but to, the other guys on your team and your coaches. Because, we're lucky enough to have ATC in Queensland this year, so we don't have to travel. But, for example, last year when it was interstate, you have 8 dudes plus a coach traveling, everyone's spending their money, and you kind of want to be on the same level as everyone else with your prep. And that's what we really took away from WTC, that, we had so much prep work go in. We had a week straight of games with the interstate boys before we left for WTC. We had a week's worth of just smashing out 3 to 4 games a day. And it was close to a burnout by the end of WTC. But I think because we came home with the gold, it was actually quite invigorating, and it just sort of gave everyone a second wind to keep going. And, we've brought that back into the Queensland scene. And, for months afterwards when we were going to events, guys were walking up to us and saying, congrats, we're following you overseas, we're rooting for you, wished you the best, shaking our hand, and we're kissing babies and signing tits and doing all that sort of stuff. But using that motivation to really bring into Queensland this year, and and rally not just a Queensland team, but a Mercs team they're pretty stacked lineups, not going to lie.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Queensland has like a deep pool of players from what I understand. Obviously, I'm living here for like the past month or so. It's been crazy to see how much depth there is to Team Queensland, and something I think it's been here for a while. So, maybe Josh, could you like elaborate on that? So, has this like deep pool of quality Queensland players been here for ages, or has it been something since like 9th edition came out? As someone who like runs a lot of events around Queensland.
Yeah, so basically going all the way back. So when we Michael, a guy from ACT, I forget his last name. He actually engineered what we call ANZ now. We used to call it ATC, but we used to go back. I can't even remember the year, but I was actually captain of the first one that ever ran. I think Diffie was captain of Melbourne at that stage, if you guys know him. But yeah, so it's like engineering that and trying to get this format for Australian, because it was always like a big thing for America, big thing for Europe. And it's just like we wanted to get something that we could essentially practice and get a Australian team off the ground over there. And the only way is like, how do you pick an Australian team when at that stage, like this is only like there was no Facebook, like this is all forum days, like a lot of the technology that everyone has now. There's no Twitch, we had like 3 content creators worldwide. Like YouTube was only just getting off the ground. So it's like, it was real dark days of 40K. But yeah, so we ended up getting up off the ground, started the committee, did all that. And then pretty much Queensland from that get-go, like we've had a lot of TOs in the past that have been very supportive. Obviously we run multiple team events now. Adam Norberg is a name that a lot of guys will probably remember. He was probably one of the big influences in change. Everyone wants to win a singles, and it was a little bit hard where he's like, no, I'll run teams, I'll run doubles and all that to get that team aspect going. But yeah, Queensland, the reason why we've got such a pool is we always adopt a, pretty much like a 75-25% mix in our players. So we try and have a very good core of like guys that are very highly experienced and been before, and we always try and introduce 1 or 2 other players. The good thing though is that we've hosted twice now in the last 3 to 4 years. So we've always had to have a Merc team. So our exposure in Queensland over the last, say 5 years of gaming is really rocketed. I think Dineeth was one of the original Merc teams in, I can't remember the year, 2019. Help me out, Dineeth.
2019, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, because we had COVID shut down a lot of it. But yeah, so essentially, like we've always had anywhere from like 30 to 40 players with at least 2 reps in playing in the ANZ for most of the time. So it's like everyone knows the format. We've run scrims to make sure that everyone's practiced in it. We change our captains a lot. So Dineeth had it last year. Eric's got it this year. Simon's had it in the past, myself, so stuff like that. So we changed the leadership a lot to basically, I think Liam had it, but that was the COVID one that got shut down. But he still put in all the effort and did all the coachy stuff. So it's like we pretty much make a team of coaches, essentially, like as in, of captains, because it's like there's so many players that have also been captain. We all know the process. And the other big one, because I was speaking to Eric beforehand, I'm like, asked him what thoughts he wanted shared. We approach it from a lineup perspective in regards to like, we don't look at individual players and what they're playing currently in the meta. We look at what we roughly would need in a lineup, and then we adjust from there. But any weekend pretty much throughout the year, you can go to Eric's place, as long as you're respectful and nice, and Diffie's just getting up me for pronouncing things wrong. So basically Eric always holds things, opens up his house to a lot of people, and that's very big from him as well, because you can imagine, what was it, like a weekend or 2 ago, it was like 19 people in his backyard. It was something insane, but he's been doing that for years. So like we pretty much put an emphasis in Queensland of like getting new guys in. putting them through the gauntlet, but like more emphasis on coaching them. We want them to the point where they beat us, essentially. Because if we're not, if we're not training the new guys up to test us, we're going to fall behind. So that's always been a Queensland mentality.
Yeah, and so it sounds like players aren't just coming from the GW at Mount Gravatt and stolen from Eric and Liam or other players, just like pulled away from the tables there. They actually came around for various tournaments and stuff like that, and get involved in the community, which is fantastic. And as someone who had the opportunity to attend one of Eric's sessions, it's amazing having all those people around, like just watching games and like learning from them and just like making comments and making like, I guess, suggestions as optimal plays. Like I know Simon's like, hey, you could have done this instead of that. And like getting for those practice reps and having that high quality players is amazing. So you talked about that, like switching it up and having that 75 to 25 mentality. Why is that? Because obviously, I guess you could probably just stack the team every year with, I guess, all ANZ players. But is it so you just refresh and get people excited, or what's the mentality? And maybe you could address a bit more like how Queensland selects their team.
So I took over rep a couple of years ago, and basically it got to the point where it's hard to have like a selection criteria when you've got like 35 decent people that could fill in for a team. So it's like right now we got Dineeth, who captained last year, a winning team, but he's captain of the Mercs this year because it's like trying to rotate it through to try and give everyone a go. If we kept it the same guys again, like we've had, how many Australia players we got in Queensland currently? We've got Liam, Eric, Duck,
5 to 6,
Simon. Yeah, like it goes up and up. So it's like
Will
imagine just stuck it. Yep,
Terracin,
exactly right. And that's even this year, yeah. So it's like we're sitting at like 7 to 8 people that have played for Australia, currently in Queensland. So you go, obviously there's good reason because we keep it close and train our dudes up. But yeah, no, we always try and do it to like give everyone a fair go. Like we don't want to get to the point where it's just like, oh, he's always sort of been good, but then at the same time, you might have laxed a little bit. Real life gets in the way. You're not playing as much, or you're not actually winning. Even though you're a very competent player, sometimes additions change and you don't picking it up well. It keeps everything fresh, keeps people happy in the community that they have something to strive for. That is actually attainable. Not, oh, come on, guys, you should come over our house and help us practice all the time, but you'll never actually get to play in the event. Like that would just seem sucky. So it's like we're very mindful of that. That's pretty much one of my hardest jobs as rep for Queensland is doing the selection criteria and the fact of like without dictating it, we pretty much go, I need to start off with the core base, but we usually let the team decide. So we do, myself, I would usually pick the first, say, 3 to 4, and then from there it'll be those 4. After that fact, I dip out, and then those 4 will vote in a 5th. The 5th will, all 5 will vote in the 6th, and so on. But there's things like organised scrim days that people are getting watched at. We do organised tournaments, like pretty much all our master attendee tournaments are very heavily looked at. But it's not if you win them. It's how you conduct yourself while playing, how you conduct yourself as a team. If you're a nice person, you're not going to lend the brand or Queensland's reputation. Like we don't want, surfers or dice rollers, like in our team, regardless of what results they have, stuff like that. So there's a lot of feeling in it, but it's not an exact science, but we're just trying to get everyone happy and at least trying to keep going and playing in it.
Look, it seems to be working so far. So why change it, right? So I've obviously been winning for the last couple of years and hopefully win again this year. So how do you keep that sort of hunger alive, though? So maybe, Ducky, you can answer. Obviously, you got your team won it all like last year per se, and I'm sure you want to win it again this year. But how do you keep that grind and I guess that approach to wanting to win it again this year? Because obviously when you've won it a couple of years in a row, it's like, why do we have to try again? Like, I'm sure we're good enough to do it. And you have this quality player. So how do you keep the grind, I guess, mentality alive?
I think it's the healthy competitive community within Queensland, which shined pretty brightly at the Interclub event we had a few weeks ago where, around Southeast Brisbane and Gold Coast, we had, 6 to 7 teams field like a 5-man lineup. So it's a lot of sources to draw your players from, and getting together for those days and like the days at Eric's house, it inspires the competitive nature in us, but also the also how we help each other get a bit better. There's no point of inviting Ben way over and beating him 5 games in a row, then sending him back to Madawi because he doesn't learn anything from it. But it's the nature of competitiveness and a bit of nurture with some of the up and coming players that makes them feel included, makes them strive to want to be on the team, and get that not the respect, but just to be part of something that they haven't been part of before.
Yeah, that's more than fair. Obviously, Dineeth, captain for last year, and like you're the captain for the Mercs this year. Is it hard to sort of manage expectations? I guess when you sometimes hear mercenaries, it's like, oh, these are just the fill-in players. These are just the bystanders per se to be the buy-buster. But I'm sure you guys probably have a bit of as a chip on your shoulders, like, I could have been on this Queensland team this year. I want to prove myself per se. How are you guys trying to manage that expectations? Or are you guys just going to go there, have a good time, drink some beers, and see how the dice may fall?
Yeah, it's honestly, I haven't thought about it that much, but it will be quite awkward when we win the event. It'll be really awkward when we do that. But no, our guys are really hungry. It's been a really cool feel in the Merc team, actually, because a lot of those guys, myself included, pushed hard to be on the main team, and we kind of got that second chance of, the Queensland team is such a stacked lineup this year, and it's gonna go hard. I'm looking forward to when they, do really well at ANZ. But we also got an opportunity to play against the best players in other states, and if that's not, a great way to show how well we're going to do in future years, I don't know what is. So a bunch of the new players that we've got on the Mercs team are really pushing hard. I actually had a really cool faction lineup ready to announce to everyone that's listening about the Queensland team and the Mercs team. That was completely fake. So I'm not going to do that just because I don't want to troll everyone. But yeah, we've been playing around with some really, really cool lists. And the coolest thing I found is finding out the ways that these players want to play. And the event that Josh ran, the team event in March with Gladiator Gaming, was a really good test for some of the stuff we've been working on. And both the Merc team split into 2 teams for that, and it was an awesome test run of a lot of the stuff we're working on. Myself and Nathan Bleakley will be managing the pairings a fair bit, and our 2 coaches, Braden and Ben, are helping out as well. So we've got some really cool ideas with pairings. But mate, we are very hungry. It's gonna be good.
Happy days.
We've offered bounties similar to what Ben Way and all the Dale Summer were doing down in Sydney. So if the Mercs end up versing Queensland, whoever beats a Queenslander on the main team gets a beer from me.
There we go. What more could you want other than, like, obviously state pride and stuff like that? Get a beer as well. Happy days. Is it a 4X? That's got to be a 4X, right?
It's their choice.
Their choice. There we go. So something we probably haven't touched on enough is, Josh, on top of being part of the Team Queensland who are going to try and participate and win this event, you're actually TOing and organising this event. How's it been organising an event and as well as doing all the study and preparation for this event? Like, I imagine it might be a bit stressful.
No, not. It's not really stressful. It's actually one of the lower. Like Dineeth said, I just did 110 player one, so that was 24 teams. So this one, it's filled with all the professionals of Australia. So a lot of the times, it's not like rules queries aren't that as much and stuff like that. So it's only because obviously we follow a lot of the WTC stuff. So as a TO, I'm like just plug and play. So it's like, what's the WTC actually doing? There's their FAQ. There's their map packs, all that sort of stuff. So for me, it's just making sure the terrain's up to scratch. I wasn't originally going to run it this year, but we had a bit of a shortage of state reps that wanted to, and Ben just come off the back of running it. So we didn't do it again in Sydney, or New South Wales, sorry. So it was a bit of under the pump because I changed locations. So we ran the one in March. The venue's hot to trot. Like the rest of the boys can, probably agree with you there. But it's like, yeah, aircon's pumping, bar there, good lights, carpet, which is great to stand on all weekend, stuff like that. Food's pretty good. But yeah, so basically running it and stuff like that, it's just getting everything sorted. It's trying to work around all the different states as you can imagine. So it's like, it gets slowed down. Like when you're a normal TO and someone asks you a question, I can just fire back an answer, but I'm like, now it's a case of, I've got to check with the other reps. They got to check with their state teams or state captains. A question can take anywhere to 4 to 5 days. Like we did have an incident where I asked for map preferences and it was like 7 weeks, stuff like that. So it's just like, ended up getting to the point where I'm like, I sort of have to get this stuff out. So, but yeah, like for me, it's not too bad. Like on the day, it'll be a lot easier. I've lined up some really good guys to help me. So Jack Tinning, he works closely with he's going to murder me. I've forgotten his team
Low
name.
rollers.
Low rollers. That's the one. Yeah. So he's put his hand up. He's come along as part of the pretty much Queensland and TO collective that we've started up this year. So he's come along and stick his hand up. We've also got Reese Biena from TNA, one of your mates, Sam. So, but he's so those are the actual TOs on the day. So they'll handle the rules queries and stuff like that. Any problems with pairings and BCP sort of stuff, they'll be able to help the guys out. I've done a lot of the admin trophy type assortment stuff, but I've got some pretty good guys already set up for that. And then we've got from Magnet Case, Mr. Peter Trelou. He's butcher his name every time. Lovely gentleman, but he's handling my doubles at the same time. So to fill the capacity to make sure that everyone's getting as much as they can out of the event, I'm running a doubles at the same time. So it's a bit of a relaxed event. So guys can just have a bit of fun, 4 guys on the table. And if they finish their rounds up early, they can watch the rest of the big boys, play on their tables and nut it out. So, but yeah, it's going to be an awesome event. So, but yeah, it hasn't been too stressful.
Oh, that's good. That's what I like to hear. As long as it's not too much stressful, so you can focus on the obviously your Queensland team get all the prep work for that. So, Dineeth, you mentioned there before, obviously some the changes per se, how the Mercs are approaching it. But like Ducky, obviously from the main team perspective, what are some of the things you're trying to teach your new players joining the Queensland Merc or Queensland team? Apologies about preparing for ANZ TC. Obviously, I know one player being Alex Terrison is his first time playing in the 8-man team event. And I'm sure there's some other new players and new blood getting the whole experience. What are some of the biggest things they're trying to find out and figure out on the fly?
Yeah, so first of all, the big one is it's okay to lose, especially in practice games. We encourage a loss if you're going to learn from it. And we talk about this on the Ethos podcast of having a growth mindset, and that plays a huge part of sort of what you need to do to be on Team Queensland, because I don't speak for everyone else, but it has a bit of a theme that once you get on there, you don't just go, all right, I'm on the team, sit pretty for a couple of months till the event comes up. Everyone's constantly changing, they're constantly watching the meta, they're constantly getting in reps and a bit of advice from everyone else, and it's encouraging those newer players to use the experience pool that's within the team, and really just squeeze every ounce of experience out of it.
No, fair enough. How about yourself, Dineeth? How did the people sort of try and so from the Mercs team, you said you tried to do some testing and include people to learn things on the fly. What were some of the things you tried to teach the people for this Gladiator Teams event?
I think one of the things that I really learned last year when I was on the team with Eric and Liam was when we were playing a lot of practice games is understanding the matchup well in advance. Like obviously we give a matchup a color on a spreadsheet to pair, but then you go into the game, you look at the map, you look at the mission, you look at how everyone else's pairings are going, and you kind of discern, have an idea of what that 5-turn game is going to look like. And there are elements where you're in a matchup or you're in a game where it's not super favorable. So that affects how you deploy, pick your secondaries, things like that. So if you use that info to go into it rather than always just having a plug and play plan for every single game. Like last year when I was working on the Tower, we found out, the Tower was really good into the Tower list that we took as Queensland was really good into the Tower mirror. But we also found it was particularly horrific as me and you both found out, Sam, into Eldari variants. So having, a very specific plan for that, and, having a specific plan for like Harleys or Tyranids, and kind of playing those losing secondaries when you go into a hard game to really make it annoying for the other person to kind of just 20 you instantly is a really important skill. And that's something our kind of more defensive shieldy players are picking up. One example, Zach de Glass, who's our player on a certain faction that's very defensive, he showed at the team event in March that he just went 4-1, and in his hardest game against Simon, when we played the Queensland boys, he got 8 points out of it. And I was like, sick. If you can do that against Simon, one of the better Eldar players, like I have full faith that you know how to manage this. So he's going to be an absolute bulwark for the Mercs. And then the other main thing we're just working on is getting everyone's pairings accurate. A number of players have played a number of team events, but it's their first time at the full 8-man, and just understanding how important it is to be accurate with your pairings on a certain mission. That's something a lot of the players are getting better at.
Fantastic. That sounds awesome. And sounds like people are learning and getting some valuable lessons out of it. And I'm sure you're teaching your wise words for sure along the way. So how have you tried to select the factions and roles for each person? Is it sort of their natural play style, or is it some armies that they play generally? You just try and tailor it for them. So Josh, obviously part of the main team. How have you sort of tried to select the main factions or main players for this team, in terms of roles? Have you given them the army and then they try and figure it out in that spread, or is it more they have a sort of play style that they fit and then pick the army for them?
Yeah, so it's a mixture. So essentially we go off the lineup. So it's what's it feel like to have these factions in pairings? So we can generalize it and say, what does Imperial Knights feel like? And you go, can we throw it up? Can we leave it later? All that sort of stuff. What's another faction like Tau? We've got 2 Tau gentlemen in here. What can you use your Tau for? It's throw it in the mirror, bully some other people, stuff like that. So we don't concentrate on what the actual faction does per se, or what its win rate is. We look at it and how's it feel to use it in an 8-man spread, and you go on, because you go some, let's call, I don't know, something frail, Dark Elder, and you go, do you want to have that in your hand when you've got also Knight players in your hand that you need to keep away from another, Votan and all that sort of stuff? But you go, what does Dark Elder feel like? And you go, is it worth taking? It's in singles, it might win by a handful of points every time, and it's a high winning list. The problem is we're playing in WTC where differentials matter. So we've actually got to beat opponents by 6 points every bracket to gain points. So it's you go, there's no point taking a list that wins by 2 or 3 points because it plays a very reserved game. You might, but that might be a shield list that we might put up to go, you can go out and just eke out small losses, minor wins. Oh, hang on. But yeah, so that's where we approach it. For people playing those factions, it helps if they actually do know it. But we we have a very big lead up into our events. So we try and pick our team fairly early to give the guys stuff. Everyone's in the same boat where we've just had the data set drop. So that could very well change someone's complete, if someone's been playing Transhuman Deathwing all this time and now they don't have it, they're now stuck on a team, without any sort of practice on anything else. So a lot of the times we get our guys to play multiple factions. We get them to play multiple variants of their lists. And that's what all these scrims at Eric's places, and Dineeth uses a store Irresistible Force down at Tana Marie and stuff like that. Those guys meet up there. So we have scrim days to basically nut it out and go, I need more practice into these archetypes. And it's give me mech guard, give me foot guard, that sort of stuff. So we practice not against netlist per se, but we archetypes is the biggest one. But I'll let Duck and Dineeth expand a bit more.
Yeah, so Duck, do you want to maybe expand a bit more about the sort of testing and practice and maybe keeping stuff in-house?
Oh, look, I don't want to give away too much because I'll get a angry message from a short Greek man. But look, we like to play to our players' strengths. If someone's a typically aggressive player and they like swinging a sword, then they're going to be playing a sword list. If someone can play quite reserved and, squeeze points out of every matchup, then, they're probably more of a put-up shield player, and that's where we'll start. So we'll identify a player and their play style and their strengths, and then work off that, allocate them a book, then they build it themselves. But there's not a lot of, it's definitely not like a dictatorship. It's not like, Josh, you're playing this list and you're going to do this. It's very sort of structured from the start, and then everyone does their own prep and their own research and, their own scrims and gets their own matchups down pat. So the onus is really on the player themselves, because if they don't put that effort in, someone else will next year.
No, that sounds great. Give them their autonomy, give them the chance to prove themselves. Sounds amazing. Obviously, I guess part of the stereotype for Queensland is you keep a lot of things in house, and it's all very secret tech and stuff like that. Whereas maybe other states which are growing, we don't have the opportunities to play as many games within our own clubs. We have to go to events and test out lists. Do you find that, I guess, beneficial to keep it all in house and secret without getting us in real life testings at those like more public events? So obviously, I'm sure a bunch of ACT New South Wales players recently have attended a couple of events and they're testing out their ANZ TC list or archetypes of that list. Whereas you guys are able to probably keep it all behind closed doors, in house. Do you find that beneficial? Or has it always been the case of keeping it all in house, closed doors, or was there a time where you guys had to sort of test it out in the wild and public and get in real life practice? Maybe Dineeth been here for a little bit, so has it always been this way, or?
I think there's room for both. I think testing it in the wild at a tournament's a good idea, but I don't see any reason why other states can't meet up and have their kind of core group of players test certain things. I'd encourage it. I mean, it also helps, and it also helps with effective practice, because there's practice in the sense that if you go to an event, you play 5 or 6 rounds, great. But if you think about how many of those rounds were like beneficial practice games, could you get more done in like a morning or an afternoon where a dedicated group of players play and actually talk about the matchup and the game? Because you always get feedback whenever you play a game, and some of that feedback's really good, really warranted, and really knowledgeable. And sometimes you could get a bit more if there was another player that knew your army just as well, gave it to you. So look, I think there's room for both, but you definitely need, I don't really want to call it closed doors, right? But you need that high level practice to keep operating at that level all the time, and to kind of make that your baseline level. That's really important.
The other big thing with the Oz team is we've had over the last couple of years, it's 3 to 4 states have all been, whether it be in a coaching role, playing role, captaincy, non-playing, whatever it is. It's like there's actually quite a lot of top players forming the Oz teams. Like Duck was in a team with myself when we were like prepping during COVID, and we would be on Discord 2 or 3 times a day, like 2 or 3 times a week. And like that was Melbourne players and Sydney players, Queensland players. We're going through that. Like Eric's been fairly open over the years, being captain of Team Australia a lot. Same with Liam. We got Benny in chat. He's part of Ethos, which is a Queensland gaming club. So it's like we do spread the love a lot, but when it comes to like closer to the events, you want to keep a bit of tech to yourself, because it's like if you don't, no one's really going to step up. At the same time, like we give the people a knowledge on how to, like, we're pretty open in regards to like how we do matchups and how we select our teams and all that. I've always like everyone pretty much in Queensland openly talks about it. But the only time that we sort of knuckle down is pretty much when we're in our camps prior to the event, because it's the same thing. Like you want it competitive, but at the same time, you don't want people tailoring for you. Not that I don't think it would help them. I think it would do the opposite. But I'm like, you don't want them going, like Ducks on Tau and Denise on Tau. This cat's out of the bag where everyone's got to prep to beat Tau, and you go, what happens if you don't verse Queensland? And all of a sudden you've adjusted 2 to 3 lists in your lineup to deal with Tau, and you never even see it. Like that's going to be detrimental for your team. So,
and then bam, me and Ducky are on 30 Deathwatch Deso Marines. See ya.
Exactly. Yeah.
Joke's on you. I'm Peyton Space Marines.
There's definitely a degree of like you want to have your secrets, but at the same time you want people to find it out for themselves as well. Like everyone's like, how do you get there? It's like, well, we give you a book and we give you free reign, and then you just get put into hard situations where guys don't make mistakes, but then openly talk without, this guy's lost 4 games and he scrims in Eric's backyard, he's shit, he's off the team. That doesn't happen. It's more or less going, here, how do you think you go? Where's the self-assessment? And then you move on from there. And like that's what we try and instill in our players a lot.
Sounds great. So obviously we had the balance style slate drop literally last week, and I'm sure teams are scrambling trying to figure things out. All definitely Terminator builds are just out otherwise do. But what are some of the things that you're expecting heading into this event? Maybe Duck, what are some of the things maybe you expect other teams to be taking?
Oh, see, it's hard to answer that without giving away some of our own insights. So solid question there, Sam. That was a bit of a bait.
I think there's some big generalizations you can make, though, right?
Yeah, of course. There was some previous things in the data slate that have been removed. Some obviously new ones came in, like your Dark Angels. Not even a slap on the wrist; it's more like a kick up the backside. But I think it's definitely going to shake up the meta and how people approach their list. Thankfully for Queensland, we have those Australia players on the team, and we had to do the exact same thing for WTC. We had Nephilim drop 3 or 4 weeks before lists were due, so we did have to scramble a little bit. And I think the experience will still shine through. People have had to go through it will sort of prevail, and the ones who haven't might sort of miss the mark a little bit.
Yeah, and I'm sure for the people who are attending this year's WTC, like, it's going to be another good practice, this sort of balanced data slate for what 10th edition is. Obviously a bit different, a completely different edition instead of a data slate, but still some good practice along the way, as you sort of experienced last WTC with the whole mission pack change. Obviously, Ducky, yourself, so you and Simon have started doing a podcast with Ethos. How have you found doing that content creation while still trying to prep for an event? Do you find it hard to try and keep stuff indoors and not talk about it, or does it really relate?
No, I mean, we have quite a large sort of run sheet of what we want to get through with the podcast, and you might find Simon and I are the more regular people who are on it because we were the ones who sort of had the most availability and the most drive to start it. But a part of our run sheet is we essentially have an episode featuring every part or every person who forms part of Ethos. So they'll be jumping on and discussing their own strengths and their own passions about the hobby, which will make up separate episodes. So we have the hyper, and the podcast in the chat is huge. Everyone wants to sort of book their time and when they get in and do their thing and talk about what makes them happy and why they're in the hobby. So I don't think there's ever a shortage of content we're going to have. We don't want to overload people with content. So having that is a really nice way to balance the content creation and staying in the competitive scene as well without burning yourself out.
Oh, sounds great. So we're coming towards close to the end, but now we've got to understand, like, who are some of the teams that you guys are predicting for? So we have Dale Sumner in the chat. So maybe Josh, you can start asking. So what team is getting maybe some of the most attention from you when the lists get revealed? Hopefully, I guess maybe this weekend or next week. List is due this Friday at 9 p.m. for people who 7 p.m. It's 9 p.m. For people unaware, so remember that one. So who are some of the teams maybe expected to be on the podium, or you'll have like an extra eye on for lists? Maybe Josh can start, then you can go Dineeth afterwards.
First off the bat, we've got Taz and ACT. We always make sure that, because it's like, it's one of those things where you go, those guys sort of cook their own stuff and they're not, in the main stream. So it's like, because like I said, we got a lot of the bigger guys already in other teams. We roughly know most of the other top tier lists in other teams, or roughly what people play or what their depth is. But it's always like that one little soccer punch that comes out the side that gets you, and stuff like that. So usually we just look at that because it's like, so half the times if you're not in the clicky groups and whatever. No, that was a bit harsh to say. I wouldn't say clicky groups, but it was like it's like those teams can offer up a lot of stuff because we don't get down there enough. Like a lot of the guys went down just recently to Taz and were like, raving about it and stuff like that and had a real good time. So we look at those sorts of stuff, like things that we might not commonly see.
You're on mute, brother.
Could try to do the shortcut bells, opening up another tab and not having a big issue there. Also, it's the first year since for a while now, New Zealand North and New Zealand South will be attending. So I'm sure that's someone to be paying attention to. So Dineeth, who are some of the people you're looking to pay attention to when lists come out?
Yeah, look, just on the same sentiment as Josh, like even last year with the Taz team, they had a really interesting tower list. They had a really interesting, custodes list that we played round one, and that was kind of cool to see their take on it. So I'm very excited to see what some of the other teams bring with their ideas and what's going strong. Obviously, very keen to see what New Zealand are going to do, because I believe a lot of their WTC players are coming over as well. The team I'm actually keen to see firing hard is New South Wales. I'm quite close with Josh McMillan, and what he's doing down there with the players is going to be super cool to see, especially because 3 of their players are national level players. You've got Brodie Middleton, Josh McMillan, and Chris Wright. So very, very interested to see how they go. And of course, I'm keen to see when the lists come out of our homeboys, the Queensland team. It's going to be very, very cool to see how they go.
Exciting times ahead. Finally, what is the prediction? So obviously, starting with yourself, Ducky, who are some of the teams you think will be on the podium? Obviously, I assume you guys could be number 1, but who do you think are going to take 2nd and 3rd spot? Maybe who'll take the wooden spoon overall?
Yeah, you got to back yourself to win it. If you don't, you're a bit crazy. But look, I'd love to see the Mercs on the podium. They've been putting in so much effort, and they've just really knuckled down, and I don't think there's a sort of chip on their shoulder. They just want to really, just have a good showing, and the vibe is really positive. I'd like to see New Zealand up there. They sent a good contingent over to the VTC, the Victorian Team Championships in September in Melbourne. They did pretty well. A couple of New Zealanders came over to Uprising Adelaide and had a pretty respectable showing. I'd love to see a New Zealand team on the podium.
Very nice, very nice. Dineeth, who do you think is going to be up there on the podium? So it sounds like Mercs and Queensland are going to be there on the podium, and obviously Mercs are being ahead, but
the Mercs would love it, man. Like I would be ecstatic if we're up there. Ollie Johnston, one of our Merc players, says, Dineeth, if we win the thing, you've got to make us all Normal Bloke shirts. And I said, fuck, I guess. but no, I'd love to be up there with the Merc team. Look, I really want Queensland to win in some form. I think the main Queensland team is very, very strong. A great lineup, and even that I don't even want to say even, like the newer players on the team are fit and firing and ready to go. But same as Duck said, I'd love to see New Zealand do really well. I'd love to see New South do really well. So I'm just overall really, really keen for this event. In 2.5 weeks, like just under 3 weeks. It's gonna be awesome.
Very close, very, very close. Surely you could be a bit different than normal blokes. Obviously, if you win the whole damn thing, like surely you could be like the championship blokes or the exceptional blokes or something like that.
We'll just make the normal jokes shirts for the other teams. Does that sound all right?
There you go. That sounds perfect. What you, Josh McGowan, who do you think's going to be on the podium?
Oh, it's going to be Queensland 1 and 2 for sure. I'm proud of my guys. Like as I said, I'm in both camps with the Mercs and stuff. Deneeth's done an awesome job. Eric's doing an awesome job. But yeah, it's just like I want them to have rewarded for their efforts this year. But yeah, I think everyone's up there. Everyone's coming through their own challenges and all that sort of stuff. Sydney would be good to see. Reinforces the WTC picks. Melbourne with their turmoil behind the scenes. I'd love to see them do really, really well. And stuff like that. But like I said, I'd love to see Canberra or Taz just come and wallop someone, like just out of nowhere and just smash them. Like that would make my day.
Don't worry, Josh. If we don't win the games, at least we'll win the meme wars. That's what really matters, honestly. No, so I think it's great. I think obviously the biggest thing is everyone gets to enjoy themselves, play some Warhammer, and it's great to have the full 10 here. And hopefully next year or the year after, Northern Territory join. And look, maybe from there we can start talking about Pacific Team Champs. But that's a future conversation. We'll see how it goes. Oh, Dineeth's loving that. He loves the idea of Pacific Team Champs.
Have I got a couple of seconds to do a quick little announcement?
Go for it.
All right, so this is
Josh is pregnant
again. So basically, on behalf of Gladiator Gaming and the ANZ committee, in regards to when I've run this event, after all costs are covered, I'll be donating the remaining funds. 500 firstly will go to a charity of the winning team's choice. So that might be a Kids with Cancer or Leukemia Fund or something like that to make sure that the 40K nerds are given back a little bit. And then the rest of the money is going to be split up between both the WTC teams from New Zealand and Australia. So if the New Zealand team actually comes across with the WTC team, they'll get in contact with you and stuff like that. But if they can't get a team off the ground and they don't go, the funds will just go to the Australian team. So pretty much it's like I'm hoping for a couple of $1,000s to help the guys in the WTC team get overseas. So that's how that's our thank you from the ANZ guys, as in the committee, to the players and community for supporting this event for so long.
That's fantastic, and thank you for the generosity and kindness. Obviously, great to give back to the communities and charities, and also great to give back to those WTC teams as of obviously New Zealand attending for the first time and Australia looking to go back. And it's not a cheap trip at all for any of those guys. So really, really appreciate it. But before we sign things off, obviously, any final plugs or shout outs you want to have? So maybe starting yourself, Dineeth, any final plugs or shout outs?
Not really. I mean, for those watching along, thank you for listening. Thank you for checking out what Queensland's got to offer. If you don't already, follow Team Australia on Facebook. Follow the normal blokes and listen to our stuff. Ducky, you can take it away with your stuff.
Yeah, thanks, mate. Again, just jump on, follow Team Australia. We all want to back them and see them do well again and take the back-to-back gold. Have to jump on and check out the Ethos page. We're putting out weekly episodes at the moment on all your streaming sort of platforms, focusing on some competitive play, and a couple of other guys are going to come on and do some other episodes about Warhammer lifestyle and personal versus balancing the hammers and the family time. Some other sort of painting episodes and how we prep for events, but all from high level renowned competitive players. And be criminal to not plug the last raffle we got going on for Team Australia. I'm sure there'll be a link in the bio here to jump in and check out the raffle. There's amazing amount of swag that's been donated, including a group of Space Marines, the Salamander Army Force kit that I'm currently painting up. At the moment, I don't want to give it up for raffle because it just looks too good. So that's it. I think Liam's going to have to pry it out of my hands. But yeah, look, no corner's been cut on this army. They're absolutely immaculate, if I don't say so myself. So look, you're going to want to jump on and get some tickets for that.
Big plot twist. Whoever wins the army, Ducky buys it back off them for more money for the raffle.
I will buy it back off you and then donate that money back to the raffle. I just want the models back, please.
There we go. The commission service where you pay for and still have to paint. There we go. That's the real
there's a twist. I pay to paint your models.
Fantastic. Josh, obviously, Gladiator Gaming. Any final shout outs or plugs you want to have before we wrap things up?
No, I just want to say a big thanks to all the local communities, gaming clubs and stuff like that help their respective teams, all their state teams get up there. The coaching staff for every team, everyone has 2 to 3 coaches helping them, whether they're there on the day or, they've helped them all in their teams. They've been punching bags, stuff like that. So all those ones, anyone who loans models to people before they go, you guys are the real MVPs, because trying to get competitive armies at late notice is always a thing. But yeah, it's everyone that basically puts in some effort to make this event happen. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Can't do without those people who loan out those little models and those little one-offs to make that full squad or add that extra little special tech unit piece. Those are the real MVPs for sure. So thank you guys for showing up. I really appreciate getting that insight into Queensland. Hopefully, so on Wednesday we have the WA boys. So tune in to hear about the perennial second places, the bridesmaids, never the groom or bride, whatever the bridesmaids, never the bride, but we'll see what happens. So until next time, thank you everyone and have a great night. Take care, guys.
Thanks, guys.